Hello, everybody. Alright, I'll just wait for this to fully kick on before I really begin, because I am going to be apt to be going a bit off on what I'm going to be saying in this, because this is something that irks the shit out of me. Because I want to start off by saying that I am one that I pride myself on being a skeptic. I demand evidence. I demand evidence for just about everything. There's very little that I don't demand evidence for. And the truth of the matter is, I do that because I want proof. I want to make sure that, as Matt Dillahunty of the Atheist Experience put it, that I believe as many true things as possible and as few false things as possible. And the only way to do that is to demand evidence. To say that I want proof of a claim. This puts me in stark opposition to the official story, what the mainstream media pumps out. And I'm going to go off in this because I was accused earlier tonight by somebody that is a friend of mine, a subscriber and a friend of mine on Skype, of having drank the Kool-Aid, which is the term they like to use. They've liked to use that ever since 9/11. And I found that picture and it seems rather fitting. The day the laws of physics died. Because what we're dealing with the Las Vegas massacre is very similar to what we dealt with 9/11. If you buy the official nonsense. That being, the laws of physics have to go out the window. And it irritates the flying fuck out of me that somebody that would call themselves a skeptic would spout the talking points of this bullshit while wanting to blatantly ignore questions that are being asked. This is the problem that I have with, I would say, some sheep in the skeptic community. The ones that want to, or I should say maybe wolves in sheep's clothing would be a better term. Because the truth of the matter is, the ones that are asking questions, the ones that want proof, the ones that demand proof, are the ones that are the true skeptics. The ones that just blindly buy into the narrative of the mainstream bullshit are the ones that really are drinking the Kool-Aid. And just so I don't have to keep going back and forth with that, I'll drop that down so it's right there. The truth of the matter is, I don't buy what the mainstream media has pumped out for the simple fact they have not answered the very key questions regarding where, number one, how did the weapons, the guns, and ammunition get to the 32nd floor of that casino? I've seen someone else on Facebook had posted the idea that because this person was supposedly a high roller, that they were granted access that didn't have security cameras. And I would ask the question to that of who was the person that granted them the access? Because simply put, they granted if that would be the case, they granted a mass murderer access without being on camera, then they're an accessory. Point blank. The same with, they would be as much of an accessory as the ones that turned on the lights on the stage and pointed them at the crowd when the shooting began. You're an accessory because you're making it easy for the killers. It might not have been per se easy for people to maneuver in the dark, but keeping the lights off would be in the people's best interest, because while they might have had a hard time seeing where they were going, the shooters would have had just as much of a hard time seeing them, because there is no indication. And yes, I said shooters, because in this I am going to show you the evidence that was shown to me that convinced me we are dealing with multiple shooters. But what really pissed me off with the person that was the so-called skeptic was they were accusing me of having drank the Kool-Aid when I was just asking questions. Asking questions is not saying I've reached a conclusion. It's asking questions. And a big question is dealing with the brass. The aspect of, if, as these people try to claim, that it was a lone gunman, one shooter, we're going to put aside the aspect of audio for now. And I'm just looking at brass. Because what this person tried to put forward was the idea that maybe the police cleaned up a lot of the brass before they took crime scene pictures. I asked my girlfriend about that, and she had been an MP in the Coast Guard. And she pointed out, before I even got the question out, that for the police to remove anything from the crime scene before taking pictures, they are tampering with the crime scene. Because you have to have picture evidence of a crime scene before you touch a goddamn thing. So if the police removed most of the brass before taking pictures, the police are irresponsible. And that has to be brought out. I don't think this is a direction the mainstream media wants to go, because that would put the police department, the Las Vegas Police Department, under a fucking microscope. Were they tampering with the crime scene before the person got there? Because what that indicates, my girlfriend had pointed out to me, that is indicating that if most of the brass was taken before pictures were, then those pictures were staged. It was set up to look a certain way. And that is criminal. You don't want to do that and try to not have the police look like shit. The aspect of the brass is a big issue. Because one thing that I came across in the video that was pointed out to me is that some people, apparently there are some extremely stupid people out there that do not realize every bullet produces brass. Every single fucking one. You cannot have a bullet fired without there being brass fired. Simple as that. And this person tried mentioning the bipods. That doesn't mean shit. The bump stock doesn't mean shit. When I'm asking you about the brass is not coming from a bump stock. It's not coming from a bipod. It's coming from the barrel, or actually the side piece, where the bullet is expended. And it happens with every shot. This is basic. I dealt with it when I was in the Army. Like I've said in the live video yesterday, when I was at the range and we would have to clean up brass, we would go through and have our helmet, our Kevlar, in our hand and be picking up brass and putting it in the helmet. And when the helmet would get full, and it would, and you bear in mind, I wouldn't be the only soldier out there with a helmet and putting brass in there, and the helmet would become pretty much almost overflowing with brass, where we would take it to the person that's collecting the brass and dump all the brass out of the helmet, and then go back out and gather more. There were lots, as many as pretty much were in the company, were out on the range at that point cleaning up brass. That's how many rounds were expended that hadn't been, in a sense, cleaned up as the day was going through. The thing is, that's a lot of brass, because that's a lot of rounds that were fired on that range. That would be the same case with a hotel room if it was only one shooter. But as you're going to see, it wasn't just one shooter. And in that, I'm going to jump it over to this video, and I'm going to play part of this for you, because this will establish the aspect of clear forensic acoustic proof of a second shooter. Check this out.
All right, welcome to Forensic Acoustic Analysis of the Las Vegas shooting. My name is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. I am, of course, the Lab Science Director of CWC Labs, as well as an avid long-range target shooter. And so I have kind of a unique position to bring you this analysis. Now, for those of you who are watching from law enforcement or the FBI, I'm going to give you the location of the second shooter. And if you're like, whoa, what second shooter? Just hold on. I'll walk you through it, okay? It's very simple. So this is forensic acoustic analysis. This is all based on downloaded video files from YouTube, extracting acoustic information and then analyzing that to pull out signal from the noise. And this is what I do in my laboratory, CWC Labs, all the time. We use mass spec instrumentation. We're doing, isotopic spread ratio analysis. We're doing organic chemistry. We're doing ICP-MS, all kinds of analysis to pull signals out of noise. So this is the kind of thing I do every day. It just so happens now, it's a shooting situation. Maybe I can help out law enforcement here. I've been critical of the FBI and their lack of transparency about their investigation, but when they said they wanted help from the public, I decided to go ahead and shoot this video to, help them out. Maybe they haven't done this analysis yet. So here we go. Let's jump right into it. First of all, let's cover some basic math here. The speed of sound at 20% humidity in Las Vegas temperatures is about 345 meters per second. I'm going to use the metric system here for a lot of this, for all the obvious reasons. The speed of a 55 grain 223 Remington round leaving the barrel rifle is approximately 975 meters per second initial velocity. Now, of course, those of us who are long-range shooters, we know that velocity drops off very, very quickly, according to a chart kind of like this. Velocity versus distance. So the farther it flies, it loses velocity according to its ballistics coefficient, or BC values. Now, this is important to note. This is gonna make a lot of sense. Just hang in there. Bullets arrive first on the scene. If you're standing at ground zero, the bullets arrive and hit the ground before the sound arrives of the bullets being fired from the rifles. Why is that important to understand? Because in our analysis of the audio files, and this is like an audio waveform right here, in our analysis we have to understand that the bullets are hitting first, and then the rifle report is happening after that. This is crucial to understand. The bullets, remember, traveling at 975 meters per second. The speed of sound is only 345 meters per second. So the bullets are traveling about 3 times the speed of sound when they leave the rifle barrel.
And yes, that completely basically pisses all over Hollywood, because a lot of times in movies what you see is people that are supposedly reacting to gunfire in a movie you'll hear the sound, and that's what they're basically reacting to, where the truth of the matter is the bullets would be whizzing past them before they'd even hear anything, because yes, the bullets are moving at about 3 times the speed of sound, and the speed of sound is a constant. It doesn't change, just like the speed of light does not change. The laws of physics do not change. Let's be clear on that. But let him continue.
And at these distances that we're talking about, which is typically, less than 600 yards, I'll use a non-metric unit for that, the bullets remain supersonic. So they don't pass the transonic barrier and become subsonic velocity. So they never get slower than the speed of sound. Now, flight time is very, very important to understand here. Bullet flight time is how long the bullet takes to arrive at a certain distance. Now, because of the velocity of the bullet is dropping, according to a quadratic equation, the flight time is not a linear function, so you have to have a ballistics chart. I got mine from gundata.org. So the flight time to 400 yards, or roughly 366 meters, is 0.528 seconds for a 223 55 grain round fired from a 16.5-inch barrel. Now, that's about half a second, right? 0.528 seconds. We can agree that's about half a second. Now let me ask you this question. A little homework for you. How long does it take the sound of the rifle shooting to travel that same distance, 366 meters? How long does that take? Well, you know here that the speed of sound is 345 meters per second. So you can instantly tell it's going to take more than 1 second for the sound of the rifle to arrive at the scene where the bullet actually struck the ground. In other words, the bullet strikes in half a second, but the sound arrives another half second later or thereabouts. So there's a gap. There's a difference between the time that the bullet strikes the ground versus the time that the report sound from the rifle reaches that same location. Again, see in blue here, bullets arrive first. This is crucial to our investigation. This is the forensic acoustic analysis that will give us the range of the shooter, as I'll explain. So keep following along here, please. Now, I want you to notice these peaks here. See these 5 peaks? These are the sound waveforms that represent the sounds of bullets striking the pavement. And these are high-frequency sounds. If you listen to all the audio recordings, you'll see that these sound high frequency. They have a lot of high-frequency sound waves in them. These, on the other hand, these are the sound waves of the reports from the rifle in the distance arriving after the bullets have arrived. These reports have a lower frequency sound. That's what these notes are about. High frequency sound spectra associated with the pavement hits, low frequency sound spectra associated with the rifle reports from the distance. In other words, the gunshot sounds from the distance. Now, why is there a difference in the frequency of the sound spectra between these two types of sounds? The answer has to do with the transmission of sound frequencies through the medium of air. And as this chart shows, frequency versus sound transmission is an inverse relationship. So the lower your frequency, in other words, low, dull sounds, have very high transmission over long distances because obviously they involve longer wavelengths. On the other hand, high frequency sounds, such as high-pitched sounds or multiple harmonics of sounds, have very low transmission through air. Why is that? Because they involve very small wavelengths. Small wavelengths suffer what's called attenuation during transmission, which means they get silenced or, sort of muzzled or buffered or killed off or whatever you want to say. They get reduced as it travels through the air. And this is why if you hear gunshots in the distance, they are always low thumping sounds. They're not high frequency sounds. In fact, soldiers throughout the Vietnam War and World War I and II and even modern warfare, they know that you can kind of gauge the distance of gunfire based on the frequency spectra that you're receiving in your ear. You can take a guess at how far that is away. It's not an accurate guess, and we're not relying on that, but I'm just pointing that out to you so you understand the physics. Now, I want you to listen to, I'm going to show you and play you some sounds here. So here's a combination of gunfire hitting the pavement. This is from the Las Vegas shooting. Here's the gunfire hitting the pavement, followed by the rifle reports from the distance. Here's what that sounds like. Now I'm going to play for you just the sound of rifle rounds hitting the pavement. I want you to notice the high frequency sounds in that sound. Here's what that sounds like. Now I want you to hear what it sounds like, the distant rifle reports arriving to your ear or to your recording device from a long ways away. Here's what that sounds like. Notice that it's a more low frequency sound. Now I'm going to play for you a sequence that is indicated by this, where you have a rifle round striking the pavement followed by the low frequency sound effects afterwards. So give this a listen, and then I'll point out something to you about the timing. So did you hear that? Did you hear the rifle rounds hitting the pavement followed by the rifle reports from a distant location? That's very important to recognize, because what you can do is you can get the time code of those events. So you see this blue dot here? This is the time code of the last round of the rifle hitting the pavement. And then this is the time code of the last burst of the rifle report from the distance. You know, the low frequency sound. So again, rifle hitting the pavement here, this time code, rifle report from the distance, this other time code. Notice that the rifle report time code comes after the rifle hitting the pavement, the bullets hitting the pavement time code. What you do is you subtract this time code from that time code and you get a gap. I'm calling it the lag time. This lag time might be expressed in a fraction of a second. It might be 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, what have you. What's important to understand is that this lag time, because of the laws of physics and the speed of sound and the ballistics coefficient velocity of the bullet itself, this lag time tells you the distance of the shooter from your present location. Now, I'm going to say that again because it's crucial to understanding all of this. The lag time tells you the range of your shooter. If you know the lag time and you know the bullets, the rounds that they're shooting, then you can actually calculate the distance of your shooter. And I put together a little spreadsheet here. This was done just using Excel. I just copied it over here. Distance in yards, 100, 200, 300 yards. This is the lag time that you would hear if you look at the acoustic analysis of the audio file. And as you can see, if you hear a lag time of 0.597, that tells you your shooter is 600 yards away. If you have a lag time of 0.311, your shooter is 200 yards away. Now this table is only valid, of course, for 223 Remington. It's very specific to the cartridge. So you can't apply this table to everything, but if any of you out there in law enforcement, if you want this spreadsheet, I'll be happy to send you this Excel spreadsheet, and you can modify it for other cartridges if you want. It's a very simple calculation. So again, the lag time tells you the range. Now, why is that important? Here's why it's important. Because the forensic acoustic analysis of the audio file shows that there are two shooters, not just one. Two shooters. Two shooters, yes, two shooters. Shooter number one has a lag time in the audio file of about 0.559 seconds, which of course is consistent. Well, look at the chart. 0.559 seconds. Where does that show up on the chart? 0.559 is between 400 and 500 yards. See? Here it is. It's about 450 or 425 yards, what have you. What is that? Oh, that's the distance of Mandalay Bay, isn't it? So we know we have one shooter at a distance of 425 to 450, maybe 475 yards at the high end. That's consistent with a shooter at Mandalay Bay. Now, of course, we can't tell the height, what floor they're on from the acoustic analysis, but we can tell the range because of what I just showed you on the other side of this board. So we know, we have confirmation through this acoustic forensic analysis method that there is a shooter at 425, 450 yards. But we also have another shooter that shows up in this acoustic analysis. This is the bombshell breaking news. Shooter number two appears throughout the audio files, and shooter number two has a lag time of 0.374 seconds. 0.374 is, on this chart, go back here, 0.374 is between here and here, so it's between 200 and 300 yards. So we have a second shooter at between 200 and 300 yards. That second shooter happens to be around 250 yards away from where these recordings are being recorded. Now what's interesting is that this is intermixed in with shooter number one. So you hear some, if you look at the audio file and you do a very detailed forensic analysis as I have done, shooter number one, their rounds are there, but shooter number two, their rounds are also there, mixed in. Now you can't hear the difference just with your human ear. Why? Because the time differences are so slight. We're talking about 0.559 seconds versus 0.374 seconds. What is that difference? Like 0.18 something. That is not, like, you can't hear 0.18 seconds difference just with the human ear.
And that's something I want to point out for those that might want to be saying that this is speculation type of thing, because you can listen to it and be, I don't hear any difference. You're not going to hear it with the human ear. We can't pick up that difference just with our ear. That's where equipment comes in, and being able to use computers and other equipment to analyze the sound coming in. This is all very critical. It is important in understanding what's going on with what is seen. Now, I'm going to go back to this video because there is still a great deal of information that he has to share that I want you to see. And it's something that the media doesn't want you to know. And that concerns me greatly. But here he is. Oh.
You have to take the waveforms and you have to plot them in software, and you have to take the time signatures, the time codes, and do the math. And only then can you really tell the distance of the shooter. But that's what I did. And that's why this is called a forensic acoustic analysis, because this is the method. This is how you determine it. And this is based on the laws of physics, the speed of sound in air, and the ballistics of the actual cartridge that was fired. So we know that shooter number one in the Mandalay Bay, he doesn't have magical wizard powers. He can't make his bullets arrive more quickly to make them emulate 0.374 seconds, right? Would you agree with that, that Stephen Paddock, a 64-year-old retired accountant, isn't Gandalf? Like, he doesn't have magical powers, right? I hope you agree with me on that. So that means these rounds have to have been fired by someone else, because the rounds from Stephen Paddock arrive 0.559 seconds later. The report arrives 0.559 seconds after the rounds arrive, whereas this other shooter, the report arrives 0.374 seconds later. Now, what does this tell you about where the second shooter is located? Take a look at this map. This is a top-down map. This is Mandalay Bay. This is the concert venue, and that's the epicenter right there, kind of ground zero. And this is the Luxor Hotel, this is the Roman Catholic Shrine, and so on. Now, this blue, I'm going to use these blue dots here, this margin, this dotted line sort of circumference here, this is a radius of 250 yards roughly away from ground zero. What it means is our second shooter has to be located in these blue dots in order for the laws of physics to hold true. Make sense? Now, if I were leading this investigation, I would look at what buildings and possible shooting locations intersect with this blue area that's 250 to 260, maybe 270 yards away. And if you do that, you come up with three very interesting answers. Number one, the rooftop of the AM/PM convenience store on the north side of the venue. A shooter could be on that rooftop and could fire due south into the crowd from an elevated position. That's what this screenshot shows you from Google Maps. Second location, Oasis Apartments, the northwest corner building of Oasis Apartments, located on the southeast side of the venue, could fire to the northwest, also from an elevated position, and hit the crowd. And that's what this 3D view screenshot shows you. Third location, elevated dirt mound in the construction site located south of the concert venue with a very clear unobstructed view to the north from an elevated position. Now, I don't know if there's actually a big dirt mound still there. That's what Google Maps showed me. Maybe it's different now. Maybe there's been more construction there. But at least from what I saw on Google Maps, there was quite an elevated dirt mound there that could make an excellent shooting position from the prone position. So the first question I have for the FBI is, have you gone around to these buildings and have you looked for brass and have you looked for evidence that shots were fired from those positions? And if not, why not?
Right.
I mean, I'm just a civilian. I'm just a guy, a scientist. I put this together in about 3 hours using no taxpayer money on a Sunday afternoon just because I found it an intriguing little problem to solve. Why isn't the FBI using this to go look for the second shooter? Now, even better, the FBI can actually pinpoint the location of the second shooter using the following method. FBI can triangulate, and here's how they can do that. All they got to do, I'll use these, all they got to do is go out and find the location of every video that was shot, that was recorded, find those locations, map them on here, and then use the acoustic analysis, get the lag times, compare that to this chart to get the distances of the shooter, draw circles at that radius. On the map here, you draw multiple circles around each video that was taken, and then where those circles intersect, wherever they intersect like this, that's where your shooter is. And there'll be multiple intersections, but you can investigate those, or you might get patterns of overlaid intersections if you map 10 videos or 10 recordings. So the FBI can use this method and this chart to identify almost exactly the location of the second shooter. And I've just basically spelled it out. This is how you do it.
That is the critical part of this. It is not a matter of going by media talking points. You can, and I'll have the video that I showed in the description bar below so that everybody can go to that, and I'll do that now. And I will add that as I'm and I'll even take out the introduction of potential rant because that's not necessary. There is the link to that video because it's critical that people understand this, because going by what the media is putting out, we're not being told the full story, simply put. And that is where just going by the audio, there is at least 2 shooters, if not. The thing is, there could be multiple on the ground, in a sense, moving in that circle perimeter. And basically, I don't think we would be able to tell how many shooters are at a distance. Maybe they could, but as far as I know, they may not be able to determine if it's 2, 3, whatnot. But the fact that there are multiple because of sound and distance is very big evidence. And what convinced me with it is the aspect of the laws of physics, because those do not change. They're not subject to your interpretation, your opinion. The laws of physics don't care. The laws of physics do not care how much money you have. They don't give a shit about any of that. It's the same for all of us. And the idea that you would have one shooter that could magically teleport back and forth is absolute bullshit. That's not even close to anything feasible. I recognize the media has their own agenda. But what bugs me to no end is somebody that wants to try and say that they're a skeptic, but when I ask questions, just the asking of questions, that's considered drinking the Kool-Aid. Really? I would say spouting the talking points of the mainstream media, that's drinking the Kool-Aid. Because I don't give a damn about bipeds, bump stocks, any of that. I'm interested in where's the brass, and since it was brought to my attention, the sound. I'm interested in things that, to use the term, actually matter. Not what the media has been, the talking points that they have outlined for them of, this is what we want you to focus on because this is what we want to try and take away from the American people so that we can remove some more of their freedoms. And the problem I have with the taking away of guns is everywhere that we have seen that guns were taken away from law-abiding citizens, the crime rate skyrocketed. Because despite what those that buy into what the mainstream media pumps out, just because guns would be termed illegal, criminals would still get them. Criminals don't, those that are interested in breaking the law aren't going to give two shits about what's legal. They'll still get whatever they want. They'll just do it through illegal means. The idea that, and I had seen a meme that kind of made me chuckle. It was a Batman and Robin saying if guns wouldn't be in stores, people wouldn't get them. And Batman slapping him and saying, where is meth sold in stores? And the truth of the matter is, that meme is exactly right. The aspect of drugs, people still get drugs, even though they're not sold in stores. Because those that are interested in that aren't going to Walmart or whatnot to try and get their fix. They have other means by which to get the drug of choice that they have or that they want. The same would be true for those that would want a gun or whatnot that would be illegal, or if guns themselves as a whole would be illegal, then what you have is an entire population that is defenseless against the criminals. And that is disastrous. Because basically it would be, look at the crime rate in Australia. That my girlfriend mentioned this to me, that it skyrocketed. When they took the guns away from the civilians, the only ones that have guns are the criminals. And at that point, what you have are criminals that can run wild without having to worry about an armed population. No, because guns are illegal. So what you have is a society that is easy pickings for those that are engaging in criminal activity. And that is where the mainstream media I have a big problem with. I also have a big problem with anyone that wants to try and say that they're a skeptic, but they're swallowing hook, line, and sinker the bullshit pumped out by the mainstream media, and they're not doing any type of critical thinking regarding what is being pumped out. I don't give two shits if it is regarding the aspect of Las Vegas or 9/11 or any. If you're trying to say that you're just blindly buying into whatever the official story is without examination, without looking at what makes sense and what doesn't, what fits within science, what does not. These things are very important. And for people to try and act like they're a skeptic, but they automatically buy into what the mainstream media pumps out, I'm sorry. If you're not critically analyzing, sorry about that, I just shut down my Skype. But if you're not critically analyzing the information that you're being given, how can you say that you are being, to use the term, skeptical? I am skeptical of claims that are made when things don't add up. Like the aspect of weapons getting up to a 32nd floor in a casino where you can't even fart without them knowing what direction the smell came from. To be all of these weapons and ammunition got to the 32nd floor and there's no evidence of this, okay, how many... There had to be more than one person involved. There had to be one person, in a sense, and inside the hotel or casino that would have been an accomplice, because anyone giving the shooter free access without cameras and so forth, they're definitely an accomplice. There's no other way of putting it. They're just as guilty of the shooting of people, the mass murder. They don't have to have fired a weapon to be considered an accomplice. If you're helping those that are perpetrating this crime, you're an accomplice. You're just as guilty. Just like the getaway driver type of thing. You're just as guilty as the one that would pull the trigger or rob the bank or whatnot. Same penalty you would face as an accomplice as you would the shooter. And I would also say whoever turned on the lights that were on the stage to shine onto the crowd, they're an accomplice. Because they were clearly doing something that would aid the shooters and hinder the safety of those in there that were trying to get away. I would also add anyone that was involved in blockading the exits. If you're blocking the exits, number one, that's not to try and keep people out. That's to try and keep people in. Exits are not where people come in. That's where people go out. That's why it's called an exit. You do not block exits unless your intent is to keep people trapped. And that raises questions in my mind. And I want to stress this because it is stupid to try and say that I have bought into something just because I'm asking questions. The only thing I have bought into in this is the aspect of two shooters. And the reason I did is because that's what the evidence shows. I don't give a fuck about the media. I don't give a fuck about your political agenda. I don't give a fuck if you like guns or not. I care about evidence. Evidence is all I care about. If you're going to make a claim about something, goddamn prove it. That's my issue. That's what I care about. I want evidence. That is what a skeptic does. That is how a rational person acts. A rational person does not automatically accept something because it comes from the mainstream media. That's not rational. A rational person is not going by emotions. That, again, is not rational. It is emotional. Don't give me your bullshit. Don't try and Chicken Little me or use any other tactic to try and get me to accept a position. You want me to accept your position? Do what the friend of mine did, that because I was doubtful, skeptical of the idea of a second shooter. But the friend that had wanted me to consider that, she did what needed to be done to get me to accept something. And that is, show me the evidence. She had posted this on my Facebook page, and I was like, all right, I'll take a look at it. And I looked at it with an open mind and listened honestly to what he was saying. And as I listened to it, absolutely. I made it about halfway through this, and I was like, holy shit, he's right. The evidence is there. That's how it's done. That's how you convince me of something. It's not about, to use the term, am I a skeptic? Am I on your side as a default? I'm not on anyone's side as a default. The side I'm on as a default is the side of the evidence. The evidence is all I care about. It's the same with Christians and or Muslims or anyone and their God bullshit. You want me to believe it? Prove it. That's the way it goes. I don't care what your agenda is, or what the mainstream media wants to pump out, or what the official story is. If none of it, or if the things in it don't line up with science, the laws of physics, in a sense, the evidence, if there is a gap in the evidence, what I go with is science, laws of physics, and common fuck sense. Like guns and ammo don't magically get to a 32nd floor. Brass doesn't magically vanish. You have to be able to explain how these things got up there, where the brass went. These are things that are not in mainstream media's talking points, because they're not things that they want you to consider. Hell, one of the things that the guy in that video had mentioned, and I find this a bit hard to believe, but the stupidity of the media, I won't necessarily doubt, but the idea that there are some people that are so stupid that they don't realize every shot produces brass. Every one. That boggles my mind how anybody could be that damn dumb. But apparently, there are some that are that stupid, that they don't realize every shot that's fired produces brass. Which means if you have a machine gun on full automatic, you're going to be having brass flying out of that weapon constantly. A constant stream of brass. So based on the audio that we have from the Las Vegas shooting, there were two shooters, obviously. and one was around 200 feet away, 200 to 300 feet from these people, all right, find the brass. Is the brass on that rooftop? Is the brass on that mound of dirt? Because that mound of dirt would be perfect. He had said from the prone position, yeah, you just lay on your stomach. You can put the barrel of the weapon, or you can have your hand under it, have it against your shoulder, and just be firing. The aspect when it came to shooting, I couldn't shoot for shit. But the aspect of just laying down fire, which is about what they were doing. Spray and pray. Just point the gun in the direction you want, pull the trigger, hold it, and just spray and pray. In a sense, you're going to hit something at that point. But what you would have, undeniably, with every round, you would have brass popping out, being ejected as another bullet is inserted. It would be happening that fast. That the brass is ejected, another bullet goes in. Brass is ejected, another bullet goes in. The brass has to be ejected in order for another bullet to get in. That's how it works. If you don't understand this, you don't understand how guns operate. It's just, I mean, there's no other way to put it. And to hammer on this again, because my girlfriend was an MP in the Coast Guard, for the police to take anything out of a crime scene before taking pictures of the crime scene, they are tampering with the crime scene. That is illegal. You cannot tamper with a crime scene before it is having pictures of it, because in a courtroom you would have to prove what the crime scene was when you got there, which means the first thing you have to do is take pictures. Have the picture evidence before you remove any evidence. That's how it works. That's basic. So the idea of police removing brass beforehand, it would mean that they are tampering with the crime scene. But there's so many things with this that just don't add up. But the aspect of watching and listening and saying, I don't understand what, like, how did this happen? Asking questions about the narrative is not saying that you're buying into anything. And I will reiterate, the only thing thus far regarding the Vegas shooting that I've accepted is that there were two shooters, at least two. There could have been more on the ground, we don't know. But there were at least two. Two different distances. And the reason I believe that is because of evidence. That's the way it works. You want me to believe something, it's about evidence. Now, I would be curious if any of you have any thoughts on this. I would love to see, because the chat section has been totally silent. And it's one, doesn't bother me per se, but it's also one I would like to hear what other people have to say about this. It's just in the aspect of what has been, like, if you're going to accuse me of something, be able to prove your accusation. Or if you're going to make a claim about something, be able to prove your claim. Don't just, in a sense, spout a talking point of the mainstream media as if it matters. Like bump stocks and so forth, it's irrelevant. in what the questions that I'm raising. It's irrelevant because bump stocks have no impact on the amount of brass that would be there. They also don't impact, they have no effect on the aspect of the sound evidence. The sound evidence would be the same whether a bump stock's used or not. Same with a bipod. Doesn't mean shit. The sound evidence, the audio evidence would be the same. The brass evidence would be the same. So it wouldn't. Those things, yes, they're in the media because those are the areas that the media is given to be. These are the things we want to focus on because these are the things we want to try and take away. So that's what the media is going to be hammering on. The media is not going to be talking about things that could potentially be putting holes in their official story. They sure as hell aren't going to mention a second shooter. They're going to act like it was only one, even though the audio evidence clearly shows that that's not the case. And there are what is termed eyewitness evidence from people that were there that were saying there was somebody close on the ground that was shooting, that there was a second shooter. I recognize in a courtroom the idea of eyewitness testimony is considered so great, but I take a more scientific approach regarding eyewitness testimony, and that is why I am hesitant to mention eyewitness testimony as being anything, because in science and based on basically fact, eyewitness testimony is among the worst, because the human brain is extremely susceptible to filling in gaps that we don't know with whatever. But when you have people that are saying that there was a second shooter, and then the audio evidence confirms that there was a second shooter, okay, the audio, see, that's where the eyewitness testimony has been validated. It's been validated by the audio evidence. So in my view, when I was hearing about eyewitnesses saying about a second shooter, that didn't persuade me. That did not convince me. It was not until I was presented with the audio evidence that was where I really, that was where I really, when I saw this and I watched this video and the aspect of forensic acoustic proof, that did it. That's what matters. I want to stress that for everybody, because it does seem that for some, there is a question as to use the term, what is evidence? And evidence is something that you can prove, something tangible, something that can be examined, independently examined, and reach the same conclusion. And that is where things like this are very important. Now, I'll switch gears a little bit, because it's not just the aspect of the conspiracy theories that, like 9/11 and this, that I call bullshit on, but there's one that I have had and I've raised issues with, what was basically pumped out by this shit, the mainstream bullshit. And I had gone in tiny little circles with various skeptics and so forth over the Cosby issue. And I'd watched a video yesterday that had said about 30 reasons why Bill Cosby was innocent. And I found that interesting. And as I was listening to it, some of the things that were pointed out were things that I'd already put together myself. That a bunch of these women, their claims were debunked right away, almost instantly. Like this one that was supposedly somehow connected to Playboy. She was never in Playboy, I looked. Not to mention, I was a member of Cyber Playboy, and her name did not ring any bells. It was a Chloe, a Guyan or whatnot, that had claimed Bill Cosby molested her at the Playboy Mansion, and she gave a year and time frame. Well, the time frame she gave, Bill Cosby's lawyer had pointed out, during that time frame, he was in New York. He couldn't have been at the Playboy Mansion when you said. So basically, her claim was debunked. But the mainstream media, and this is why I have such a big problem with the mainstream media, is all of those women, their claims were blindly accepted. The problem with that is, for those that have followed me for any length of time, back in my mid-20s, I had experiences that perfectly fit what was termed alien abduction. I had said regarding the Bill Cosby claims, the claims against him, that those claims are no more valid than an alien abduction claim, or a Bigfoot claim, or a Loch Ness Monster claim, or a ghosts claim, or a near-death experience claim. They all have the same issue: no evidence. And this, in a sense, from the aspect of believing oneself to have been abducted, this is personal with me, because I had the things happen to me, the personal experience bullshit, where I thought for a period of time that is what happened. But it was when I really became a skeptic that I started to critically analyze my own experience. And I raised the question in my own head of, do I know? Can I prove that this happened to me? That this missing time that it means aliens? No. I realized I couldn't do it. And when I realized that I couldn't prove that this gap in my memory meant this conclusion, that I had to question, was my conclusion false? And what helped in that regard was Neil deGrasse Tyson pointing out, when he was asked about what does he believe regarding UFOs, and he had said, well, let's be clear on what the U stands for. Unidentified. If something is unidentified, you don't know what it is. So you can't say something is an unidentified object, hence it's an alien. No. If it's unidentified, it's unidentified. It's not unidentified, so it's X. It doesn't work that way. That's an argument from ignorance. And that is when I realized that, and that really sunk in here, that was when I had said, you know what? I can't. And I had stopped talking about the aspect of aliens and so forth. Not because, to use the term, I am more skeptical of do aliens exist and so forth, but, and I'm also, to use the term, skeptical or doubtful about the things that, the missing time that I had and so forth. I don't have an explanation for it. But just because I can't explain that what happened at that time doesn't mean that I can say, or that it is right to say, that I don't know, so this. No. It is, I don't know, so I don't know. I'm not going to try and shove something into the unknown. I will admit I don't know, and I'm leaving it there. That in order for me to put anything into there, it would have to not be a I don't know. It would have to be one of, okay, now I know it was X, and the reason I know it was X is I can prove this, and this is the evidence, this, and this, that lead to this conclusion. That somebody could look at the points that I raised to reach that conclusion and be, in a sense, looking at it independently from their own viewpoint and be, okay, I look at these and I reach the same conclusion. That's the only way that I would be able to say this block that was I don't know is now a known, because it's been, to use the term, identified. And so far as I know, that's not ever going to be possible. So in that regard, it's just a matter of that period in my life, it has to remain a great big question mark. I don't know. But with the Cosby thing, these women, the problem I have with them is a lot of their claims. Like when that first happened, I was always skeptical of what was claimed, because I looked at it as, even with that first Janice Dickinson, all right, I heard her claim. I was like, what evidence does she have? And at the time, I was working at Walmart, and I'm not sure if I was the lead or with the other, but my other lead, the one that was there, that they had brought in and had two leads at one point, and before my promotion, the lead that we had was a black guy. And I asked him what his thoughts were regarding the Cosby thing. And his answer, what had nothing to do with the aspect of race and so forth, because what he pointed out was the woman Janice Dickinson. He had said she's not the type of person to keep quiet about something for any period of time. And I thought about it, and it was one, yeah, that makes sense, especially with what, just looking into her, at her history, she's not one to keep her mouth shut about anything for any period of time, let alone 30 fucking years. What was also pointed out, that when I did a little bit of digging on her, is the story she told regarding that same event back in her book in around 2012 vastly differed from the story she told when these rape allegations were coming out and were being done. Her story had radically changed from what was in her book to what was being said now. And that is where I really start to question when there are inconsistencies. And when you have women that are making claims. Another one made a claim about Bill Cosby putting his dick in her mouth at a backstage at a Tonight Show thing, but the time frame she mentioned, that year and so forth, that she was on the Tonight Show and Cosby, they were never on the Tonight Show at the same time in that year. So her claim completely fell apart because of the fact of their appearances on that show never coincided. So what she claimed happened backstage couldn't have. So her claim was bullshit. And that was able to be done with at least a third of those women. And others in there, it was proven basically that they're riding the coattails. They're telling the same story as someone else, and they have no evidence to support that this had happened to them. Which all of this raises the question. And I've said this because I did a conversation with blank tester, Bob, and we talked about this, and I had said the damage is already done. Whether or not Cosby did anything, I had said then and I'll say now, I don't know, and I probably will never know. And the same with the rest of us. We don't know, and we probably will never know. But the thing that I can say is most likely, based on the evidence that I've seen, is he's innocent. He didn't do it. These women, yes, they made it up. And the problem I have with a lot of women in this regard is what I've seen posted regarding this is they'll try to act like because rape is real, that means the claims against him are. Bullshit! Child molestation is real. Does that mean that you molested a child? Just because somebody can make a claim against you about something like child molestation, does that mean that their claim is true because they get, say, 10 friends, 30 friends to make the same claim? Does that mean you did it? Does the number of claims being made about something that does happen, does that mean that you did it? This is the insanity that the Cosby thing has generated. And people may not like having this shoved in their face. But the truth of the matter is, your liking or not liking something doesn't alter the truth or falseness of it. In order for, it's the same thing, and I had argued with people regarding the Cosby accusations, and I'd use the aspect of God belief, aliens, ghosts, near-death experiences, all of it. Because it's the same. The analogy is exactly the same. If you're going to say you believe something because you don't know anything else, or you have no other explanation, it is an argument from ignorance. And as I heard some try saying, if there's smoke, there's fire. That's bullshit. If there's no evidence, there's no evidence. It does not matter how much smoke would be blown. If there's no evidence to support the claim, there's no reason to believe the claim. That is a big issue in this, and it's something that I deal with the aspect of like near-death experience claims and ghost claims and all of that. Is, yeah, there can be all kinds of claims. It doesn't mean that the claims are true. And that is where it's a critical part of it. Is if you don't have the evidence to support the claims that are being made, there's no reason to believe the claims. And that is where, that's what I look at. That's what I go by, is the evidence, not personal bias or what. And I definitely am not going to go by what's pumped out by the mainstream media. No. No. It's not, that's not the way it works. Something is not true just because the media reports it. It don't work that way. If that's all it takes for you, then congratulations, you're not a critical thinker. You are not a skeptic. You're a sheep. You're a sheep to the tit of the media. Don't try telling someone like me that I'm drinking any Kool-Aid because I'm questioning your official bullshit, when your official bullshit doesn't add up, doesn't make sense. But you guys have been exceptionally quiet tonight in this. I don't know if you just like hearing me rant or whatnot, but it's something that, this is something I wanted to do because it was brought to my attention, the evidence regarding a second shooter, and I hadn't addressed or even talked about that aspect, because prior to watching that video and examining the evidence presented, I was, in a sense, withholding judgment, withholding anything on that. But after examination of that evidence, yeah, I have no choice but to say it fits. That is what the evidence shows, and that's what I go by. That's all I care about. The mainstream media, what is the official story, I don't care. What matters to me is what's the evidence show. You just came aboard, Free Spirit. Okay, well, I was just about to wrap this up, but there's a video in the description bar below that had been shown to me, and it is what convinced me of this idea of a second shooter. And it is something that, to use the term, I was skeptical when I first started to watch it, but it is something that I would encourage you to check out, because the audio evidence is undeniable. And that is something that it convinced me. The only conclusion I have made regarding this is we have two shooters. Regarding the Vegas shooting, there's two shooters. There was the one that was in the hotel room that at this point, based on like the lack of brass, I'm questioning how much shooting was done from the hotel room. But the other one, as the audio evidence proves, that shooter was within 200 to 300 feet. But I also question if this Paddock got these weapons and ammo into the 32nd floor through some kind of basically backdoor type of thing, that would indicate to me that he had an accomplice. Point blank. Even if the person supposedly didn't know what he was going to do, that doesn't matter. It doesn't add up with, yes, that exactly. And the big problem that I have is I don't buy into what the mainstream media pumps out. I found this picture and I absolutely love it. The harmful or fatal if swallowed. Yeah. Because I had somebody tonight accuse me of not being rational because I was asking questions. Like, how did the guns get up there? How'd the ammo get up there? Where was the brass? And I had pointed out to them, they said about me having drank the Kool-Aid. I was like, where is asking questions drinking any Kool-Aid? Where is it saying that I believe anything to say, how did this get there? How did that get there? And where is this? How is asking those questions saying I've reached any conclusion? What I've seen is that type of mindset is the same thing we have with 9/11. And just to show you guys, the day the laws of physics died. Yeah. There are multiple problems with the 9/11 official story, just like there are multiple problems with the official story pumped out regarding the Las Vegas shooting. It can also be argued that there are problems with the official story of just about every mass shooting. Sandy Hook to Columbine to all of it. There's also the aspect with the shootings that I won't rule out is the aspect of these legalized antipsychotic and so forth drugs. Because I know from my own experience, I took Chantix for a little while to try and quit smoking, and I know that completely changed my personality. Yeah, Sandy Hook, 9/11, all of that. I question the official story. And the problem I have with people is, at least some in the skeptic community, is if you question the narrative, they treat you as if you're one of these that are denying or that you've reached whatever conclusion. No. You don't. It is not a matter, and let me just say this for anyone that would be thinking, it is the same as the idea that when an atheist says, I don't believe your God exists, that the religious take that as you hate God. No, I don't believe it exists. It's not about hating anything or buying into or being the opposite of. Just because I say I do not believe something. Yeah, the Boston bombing was another one that it didn't fully add up. There are things with that I'm like, wait a minute. But I don't, there's so many of them, I don't know. And unfortunately, it seems we're not really going to get at questions answered sufficiently. But there is also, when I'd mentioned before you came on, Free Spirit, the aspect of the Cosby accusations. Because one of the things that was pointed out to me, and I thought it was interesting, was the number of women, at least a third of them, their claims were completely debunked because time frame didn't match up. Either like the one that claimed that she was molested by Cosby at the Playboy Mansion, but the time frame she mentioned, this supposedly happened in California at the Playboy Mansion. Cosby had an airtight alibi. He was in New York at that time. Well, her claim went psst. There was another woman that claimed he put his dick in her mouth at a Tonight Show, And she mentioned a specific year. Well, people did a little bit of fact checking and found out that during that year, the dates she would have been on the Tonight Show and when Cosby would have been, they never matched up. So her claim in that regard, out the window. And that happened over and over again. And that is where, but the real problem with something like that is the damage is done. Even if it would be definitively proven that he never did anything to those women, because a big misconception that was pumped out by the mainstream media was the aspect that because he would offer them or had basically drugs that these women could take, that meant he forced it, or that they were unknowing in taking them. That's a claim that would have to be proven, and that is never something that he has come forward and admitted to. The idea that he had drugs that he would give to women, okay, so what? There's a song by Kix called Yeah, Yeah, Yeah that specifically mentions in the song about having two lewds, and a woman that in the narrative of the song, she drank his liquor, she did his quaaludes, 5 o'clock comes, oh, I feel sick, I gotta go home now. And that song, I had asked the question of, does that mean Kicks are rapists? Just because do celebrities have access to drugs? No doubt. Do sports players have access to drugs? No doubt. Do pro wrestlers have access to drugs that groupies can engage in drug use with? No doubt. This is without a question. The thing is, and where the crux comes in, is, and what a woman would have to prove, is that they were forced to take a drug, that they did not choose to. The burden of proving that is on them, because they would be the one making the claim. This is another area where people clearly do not understand burden of proof. Somebody like Cosby or whatnot does not have to prove that they didn't do X in order to, you have to prove that they did. Because one of the things I've also heard with a lot of these women that will jump to the conclusion that he did do whatnot is they'll try to use examples of, like, rape actually happens. There are so many accusations, that means he did it. That's horseshit. That would be like saying child molestation is real. It really happens. Does that mean if 1, 10, 20 people accuse you of molesting a child, does that mean you did it? Does the chances of your having done something increase because of the number of people claiming it? That's the type of shit that we're dealing with. And the problem I have with things like this is there is no penalty for somebody making a false accusation. A woman can accuse a man of rape, basically destroy his life, and even after proving that their claim was bullshit, there will still, the damage is already done. There will always be some that buy into the claim, regardless of any evidence, that there's nothing you can do to convince them of, to use the term, the truth because they're not interested in facts. They weren't interested in facts in the first place. They jumped on a bandwagon, and that's where we have the problem. And that's what we have with all of this shit, is people are not using critical thinking. They're automatically buying into what is pumped out by the mainstream media. They buy the narrative that they're being fed. And whether it is 9/11, Sandy Hook, Boston bombings, Las Vegas massacre, the Cosby thing, yeah, it's the aspect. There are so many things that the media pumps out that people automatically latch on to. And that is where I'm saying they're not using critical thinking in the first place. To use the term, the court of public opinion is, in my view, the worst court that could exist, because it's one that's not based on evidence. It's not based on fact. It's based on rumor and speculation and insinuation. And because even with like the aspect of the whole Trump and the Russia thing, I'm sure there are some that will believe, regardless of anything else, oh, Russia was involved in our elections. Even though the aspect, where's the evidence of that? There never was any. And what was pumped out in the media, and I had thought of, was basically akin to somebody, an anchor or whatnot in the media looking at someone and saying, so when did you stop beating your wife? And being, no matter what they say, the aspect, if they would be, or do you still beat your wife? And be, no. And be, oh, when did you stop? And they automatically run with the assumption. And they'll pump out the assumption regardless. But a friend of yours was, Mayo was proven he had nothing to do with it. Well, in that, did anything happen to her? I would be curious, because the aspect of the filing a false report, okay, did she go? Because that should happen. If you falsely accuse somebody of something, especially of rape, if you make an accusation and it is proven to be false, that you made it up, the penalty to the woman should be just as severe. Because that type of thing can literally ruin a man's life. And that is where I would have a major problem with the idea of the filing a false report. What that would indicate to me is more of a slap on the wrist, a naughty naughty. But it should carry the same penalty, the aspect of you can go to jail for 5, 10, 20 years for making a false claim. Because then I would say all of these women that have accused Cosby, basically it should be taken to court, especially the ones that can be definitively proven that he absolutely couldn't have, because of either not being in the same state, never having been on like a Tonight Show or whatnot at the same time as them. Those things would be easy. And I would venture to bet, if you would have a few women and their claims be so torn apart and that they go to jail because of a false report. You would have en masse these others pulling their report and being, I'm not saying that. And that is where the only way, and even then, even if all of these women would come forward and say it didn't happen, they should be charged. The problem is none of them will come out and admit that they made it up. And the damage to Cosby is already done. It's irreversible. And that is where I have a big problem with people buying into the Kool-Aid. It just, these things are very serious. It's not just about what the media is trying to push, be it with the gun issue or whatnot. There is a bigger agenda. Because with the Cosby thing, it raises the question in my mind. With all of this that I've found regarding it that points to him having been innocent, what or who did he piss off right before all this shit started? I would be damn curious. Can we figure out who was it that he pissed in their Cheerios? And then all this shit began. Because if we could figure out who that one was, we could figure out where all this other shit came from. And it may not mean, and I don't think we could definitely make the broader that it would be the same person that's behind, and because I don't think that at all. But I do feel that if we would figure out who did Cosby piss off right before these accusations started, and then follow it through, because it also, to use the term, another one that was facing, right before the election, it was actually looking like it could turn into a second Cosby, was Trump. If you remember with the whole grab their pussy bullshit, and his statement that I didn't read, it was taken as an admission of him doing this, but I took it more of an observation of celebrity, that if you are a quote-unquote celebrity, women will let you do things to them and so forth that they wouldn't let somebody that's working at Home Depot or Lowe's or Burger King or Walmart do, because, well, frankly, they have no money. And because it was like, I think it was Bill Burr that had pointed out the aspect of Tiger Woods cheating on his wife with one chick or whatnot. It's kind of a, all right, so what? The aspect of most guys, if given the opportunity, or if they would have the opportunities, they're like the aspect of guy talk, but if guys would have the opportunity to fuck the number of women that a celebrity does on a daily basis, to be only one or two, shit. The aspect of one or two, okay, fine, that's no biggie. Because it's a constant, in a sense, never-ending thing that you can have. I don't golf, but someone like me on a golf course, I hit the 18th hole, I'm not going to have a busload of bitches coming off throwing their pussy at me. Because, frankly, I don't have the money. And that's really what it comes down to. Is a lot of these women are gold diggers. Because there's also the aspect that is raised with when a man and woman get married, and the aspect of when they get a divorce, the wife gets, because I think they had mentioned like Tiger Woods' ex-wife got like so many, X amount of millions. Why? The fuck did she ever do? What did she do to earn all of that? It's like, did she ever swing a golf club? Or like Hulk Hogan, I don't know if any of you are wrestling fans, but when Hulk Hogan got a divorce, his ex-wife had gotten millions. It's like, why? She never took a bump. She never was in a match with Andre the Giant. It makes no sense of why a wife should get millions and millions just because they were married to somebody that had that lifestyle. These are things that really don't make sense. They don't. And it can be, it's definitely a lopsided situation, because I know from a guy's perspective, there's very few cases that I've ever heard of that a husband and wife get a divorce and the man gets child support. Very few. But there have been a few that I heard stories about it in someone that I knew, and my response to them was, I envy you. The aspect, I've never had kids, I don't have to deal with that, but that a man that gets child support from a woman, they're a legend. It's like seeing a Bengal tiger up close. It's just one, I've heard you exist. We're seeing Bigfoot being, I've heard you exist, but I've never actually seen one of you. Because it's so damn rare. And that says more to our culture and our society than anything. But it's just, I think it should be more proportional. And I think people should be, as a general rule, openly questioning and doubting what is pumped out by the mainstream media. And I do think more and more people are questioning and people are doubting. The only problem with this notion is, and the doubt in the mainstream media and so forth, it does have its bad side effects. That being the flat earth idiots, the moon hoaxers, the people that they take this not believing the media, the man, so forth, to an insane degree where they deny everything. That no amount of evidence will be sufficient to change their unreasonable position, be it that the earth is flat, or that we didn't go to the moon, or that gravity doesn't exist, or whatever stupid horse shit that they have bought into. That no amount of evidence will prove that their stupid notion is false. And that is where I look at it and be, that's the downside of the question everything. Yes, I am very big on question everything, but also the only thing that can change my position is evidence. You show me evidence like the aspect of what I had mentioned and what's in the description bar below of forensic acoustic proof. That does it. When you have something that is that rock solid, that you're talking sound evidence, yeah, I listen to it and I'm like, you know what? The science adds up. Everything about it makes sense. I just look at it and that's what you have to go by. This is a perfect blueprint for if somebody wants to convince me a God exists, here you go. This is the kind of evidence I require. In order for me to believe something, show it to me. Make it undeniable. Put it right out there where I can look at it and be okay. This and this and this. And yep, I see where you're coming from, and I reach the same conclusion. Okay. That's how it's done. That's what matters. Because it's not about did someone on the mainstream media or is it a talking point, but rather does the evidence support it? And if the evidence does, great. If the evidence doesn't, then I'm not going along with it. I don't care how many of the talking heads on the media pump something out. I'm not going along with something that the evidence does not support. It's not how I am. And to use the term, that's not how a rational mind operates. But for those that are just joining or whatnot, I would encourage if you haven't seen this from the beginning, either watch it over because I'm soon going to wrap this up, but also just because I don't play the whole video that I have linked in the description bar below, but that is definitely rock solid proof that there were two shooters in Vegas. There's no denying it. The sound evidence clearly shows that. And it's one he had pointed out, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference just by hearing the audio, because the human ear can't tell the difference between the sound, the distance. And he explains why, because it's like half a second or so difference, and what it comes down to is it takes a computer to be able to break down and analyze, and to be able to be cutting down on like other noises to be, all right, these are the sounds without the other noises in the way, and then be, holy shit, this is how pretty much forensics is done. That when the police and forensics are going in and examining the evidence, this is part of what they're doing. And it is something that I found watching that to be very interesting, as well as very disturbing, because just like the aspect of if somebody had helped this Paddock get weapons to the 32nd floor, that they would be an accomplice. If whoever turned on the lights on the stage so that the lights would be on the crowd, they're an accomplice. Point blank, they have to be an accomplice, because they were aiding the shooters. You don't just turn lights onto a crowd when it's dark. And whoever blocked the exits, yeah, they're also an accomplice. There's a whole bunch based on things that have been pointed out that I would be saying are just as guilty as the shooters, because they were doing things that were hindering the people getting away or their ability to get away. And if you're hindering the people's ability to escape, that means you're helping those that are trying to kill them, which means you're just as guilty. And it's something that I don't think the mainstream media and those that buy into that Kool-Aid want to consider, because that really, it broadens the scope of, instead of being a one-person deal, you have a bunch that would be behind this. You have a lot of different people involved. And it's something that I think I would like if the truth of this could come out, but unfortunately, like so many other things, I think there's a lot regarding this that we'll never know. And that's unfortunate. But to touch back on the Trump thing, did you notice how I was expecting when that was going on? And I see you say about guy talk, and I agree. And also the aspect of celebrities have access to groupies type of thing. But when it all seemed to be, that was before the election, and it all seemed geared towards the same end of trying to prevent him from being president, from winning the election. But after the election, and it was one of those, when he had, all that shit stopped. The only thing that did persist for a brief period was about the Trump University, and yeah, he paid off people that had lost money and so forth, which I think he damn well should have, because that was a clear scam. But other than that, all of this grabbing their crotches and so forth, any word of it died. Now, there were also, and it was mentioned, and the one video that I did that I showed, and I was questioning, is the aspect of a race war. Basically, are we being set up because there was another video that I did that I showed a video where somebody had mentioned that there was a witness that these Black Lives Matter and KKK people got off the same bus. And when I heard that, I was like, wait a minute. If you have groups that are that radicalized, opposing each other, getting off the same bus, that indicates to me this is like pro wrestling. That, yeah, when they're out there on stage, they're wanting to tear each other apart, but when they're backstage, they're joking, laughing, so forth, having a good time. They're friends. And that's what it would indicate to me, that this isn't, to use the term, a shoot. This is a work. That somebody has written the script, and that they're acting out the script that they've been given. And that's where I've heard the name George Soros is connected to a lot of this. Yes, the media seems to be, I think the media is trying to cause a race war. But the question I would have is, who is the one that is giving the media their agenda? Who is the one that is producing? Yeah, the fake stories and all of that. I would think all of this is basically, if it could be traced back, I don't know if it would be George Soros but it would probably be a bunch of people that are all having basically the same type of agenda that is probably anti-Trump. And it's not that I'm a fan of Trump. Nobody get that idea. I do not care for Trump, but by the same token, I don't like the mainstream media either. I don't like the attempts to try and cause racial division and all that shit. I'm not interested in that either. So it's one, and it does seem with Trump, especially with the media, that it is trying to use the term radicalize and have people divided on, if they can't do it that we're divided on race, okay, it's we're divided on Trump versus anti-Trump. And that is where I'm just kind of like, no, how about divided on fact versus bullshit? That's what I would be, because it's one, if you want me to get behind something, fucking prove it. Otherwise, no. But, alrighty, well, Free Spirit, I enjoyed your input in this because it makes it a lot better when I have people that are including your thoughts and so forth, because it can give me a direction of, in a sense, what other people are interested in. Yeah, Free Spirit, I think we're on the same page in that regard. Because regarding Trump, there is his personality and so forth. He's the aspect of, I don't care, I would never want the Kardashians to be president or whatnot. But it almost seems like that's the type of shit we have, is this celebrity bullshit as president. But by the same token, with what was mentioned yesterday in the video that I did on the women that ran for president and the things that the evidence shows regarding Hillary and her clearly having Parkinson's disease, that to me is the bigger issue of, in a sense, we dodged a bullet, because somebody that is having that debilitating of a disease, she wouldn't have been the one in charge of the country or doing any type of running of the presidency. So it would be a matter of, all right, who would it have been? But if she would have been elected, it would have been either Bill or whoever, and then she would have just made the appearances, waved, smiled, maybe given the speeches that they would have prepared for her, and otherwise you don't see anything. And in that, the media would have also been so pro-kissing her ass that honestly she could have Parkinson's, or she could even have died. And the media would just, well, if that would happen, the media would just lose their shit. And that's part of what bugs the hell out of me, is as corrupt as she is and all of that, I don't see where the difference with that, in a sense, Trump is any worse. Yeah, Hillary is ill. She has Parkinson's. That's undeniable. That video that I showed yesterday of her head nodding and the eyes and all of that, all of the symptoms she shows are clear when you look at that without knowing what Parkinson's disease causes. It can just seem like she's a fucking goof. But when you know what Parkinson's disease causes, it's one of holy shit. It's a checklist that you can just check it off and be, yep, she's got it. One of everything with it. This all fits. And that is where, because I was skeptical regarding that idea until I saw that video, and then it was one of, okay, that's undeniable. And it also raises questions for me of if Parkinson's disease was what Robin Williams was diagnosed with, that he had before he committed suicide, potentially his suicide could have been a matter of he didn't want to put his family through that type of thing. So, but either way, in that regard, the loss of Robin Williams that's one that, in a sense, I felt, because I enjoyed his work, I enjoyed his comedy, but when it comes to if somebody has an illness that is basically life-threatening and so forth, I'm not opposed to, if they want to take their own life, that's their choice. Because I do think it would be selfish to say, like, the aspect of, I liked Robin Williams, I enjoyed his work, so he shouldn't have killed himself. That's selfish. I don't have a right, because yes, I would enjoy his work, but it's also, I enjoyed the debates and so forth of Christopher Hitchens and the comedy of George Carlin. But if the other Hitchens and Carlin didn't kill themselves, but even if they would have been able to somehow have been medically drug along type of thing, would I have wanted them to be medically drug along and be suffering? No. And I think for somebody to be, in a sense, I don't want to let them go type of thing, if your only motive or only interest is yourself, then you're not doing it for them, you're doing it for you. And that is something that I think should be acknowledged. That basically don't lie and blow smoke and say it's about them, when really it's just about you. And that's what the aspect, I think, in a lot of places with people that, in a sense, are losing a loved one or lost a loved one, that it is not about the person that died, but it's about their feelings. Yeah, because of pain, fear of the end. Yeah. All right, yes. Free spirit. All right, later. Everybody, feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. And by all means, check out that other video that I have in the description bar. Later, people.